Hello and welcome back to the latest edition of B6 and Beyond, where we talk about everything from B6 and beyond. So you're obviously here with me, Ben, you know me, and obviously you know Corey. Corey, how you doing, mate? You okay?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, Ben. Been a good day today, so I can't complain. How about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Bit of a busy one, but we've had some good news today, haven't we? So I thought it was a good opportunity for us to jump on, as we've discussed. Obviously, we haven't done one in a few days, so when we get some good news, it's definitely something worth talking about, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, obviously we'll get into what that news is probably straight after this, but yeah, it's always good to sort of jump on and have smiles on our faces rather than the last few weeks where it's sort of been like trying to make content out of nothing, really.
Yeah. Well, I find it quite funny how we're both actually wearing our Villa tops today, so I wonder why.
Wow, yeah, that was a thing. I think if there's ever appropriate time to get the Villa shirts out, it's probably now.
And why is that?
Wow, Boubacar Kamara, of course. We spoke about it on the last podcast. We said, obviously, if there's one thing that we would be happy with, it's him getting a contract extension. And not only has he got a contract extension, he's got a 5-year contract extension, which I think I didn't expect 5 years. I don't know about you, Ben.
No, I didn't know. I thought it might have been another 2-3 at a push, but 5 years he's committed to the club, which in essence, a contract means absolutely nothing. It really doesn't. But from an Aston Villa perspective, and this is the view that I'll always talk about it with the Villa, you're securing that fee. If we're going to sell him now, we've got a player that we got on a free transfer, and we're going to be able to sell him for maximum value. And you know, looking now, Boubacar Kamara, how much would he be worth, especially in that small pool of number sixes in the world? And for me, and I'll always beat the drum about Boubacar Kamara, I think he's one of the best sixes in the Premier League. He's definitely in the top 5, if not top 3, in my opinion. That's how highly I rate him, and I don't want to sound like I'm being biased. He's that good. So to secure that, you're looking at a bare minimum, 70 million you would ballpark, and that's probably being generous. You know, you look at the likes of Caicedo, and I'm not saying he's better than is as good as that, because for me, I think probably the top 2 are Rodri, followed by Caicedo. But how much did Arsenal sign Zubimendi for? That was going to be around around 60 mark. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, 56.
So if you're signing sixes, an unproven number 6 at that, because he's unproven, he hasn't done it in the Premier League. He might be fantastic, he might not be, but Boubacar Kamara is proven in the Premier League. So I think it's just all round amazing news for Aston Villa.
Definitely, and I think as well, like, obviously, not to put a damper on things, but I've seen a lot of Villa fans. There's that fear of, is there a sort of release clause in his contract, and like what would that mean if there was? And to be honest with you, like you say, I think teams are going to be looking at 70, 75 million if they want to try and sign him. If there is a release clause in there, the release clause won't be any less than 100 million, I wouldn't have thought. I think it'd be similar to Jack's when Jack went. If a Champions League club comes in and we're not in the Champions League, they're going to need to pay 100 million. And again, it'd be disappointing to see him go, obviously, but like you say, it's brilliant business. We've got him for minimum of at least another year, hopefully, which is the main thing. We've got him for this coming season, which is important. Hopefully it's the push that we need to win a Europa League, which then gets us Champions League football. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we could be looking at having him for the next 5 years and building from there. You never know what could happen in the next 5 years. I mean, we've seen over the last 6-7 years what we've turned into from the Championship to where we are now. So in 5 years' time, we could be looking at a treble season or something. Not to say it'll happen, but you never know.
I just think this is that big. It's not getting the publicity that it probably deserves, like from the wider public. Because for me, Villa are in a bit of an uncertain period at the moment with our transfer business. We've not moved, and we as fans are probably wondering what's going on. We know what's going on to an extent in terms of the SCR situation, potential players that are going to leave Aston Villa. Like, you know, obviously the rumours of Emi Martinez. We'll go on to a little bit later on in the video in this pod. Sorry, but you know, for me, the most important thing for Aston Villa is trying to keep the spine as solid as it can be. And the 2 players specifically that I would not want to lose out of this side is Kamara and Watkins, and if you want to make it a third, a Yuri Tillemans. Because if that midfield 2 last season for Villa were an absolute joke when they were both at peak of their powers, and we've seen it. For example, the Newcastle United game at Villa Park when they took one of the best fields in the world for a walk around Villa Park. They've got all the ability in the world between them two, and if we're going to win the Europa League, that midfield too can win a Europa League, in my opinion.
Definitely, and I think, like you said, you touched on it slightly. Most of the viewers who'll be watching this will have come from the TikTok page, and obviously our TikTok page, I posted a video today talking about the Kamara deal, and one of the things I said was you can almost excuse the lack of business from Villa because of how big of a signing this is. It's like a new signing. It's one of them where it's such a big thing, like you say, it's not getting that much credit from the footballing world because it's Boubacar Kamara, it's not Rodri, it's not Caicedo, for example, it's not one of these flashy names, but to us he is one of those flashy names, and like I say, I think the importance of getting that deal over the line, if it meant loaning people out instead of selling them, just getting wages off books so we could afford that, then brilliant. I mean, obviously, like you say, we'll get onto sort of Watkins, Martinez, people like that in a couple of minutes probably, but he is that sort of glue, and like you say, it's been evident when Douglas Luiz was there. Douglas Luiz was so much better when Kamara was there. Tielemans has been so much better this season with Kamara there. The one thing that's a pattern here is Douglas Luiz and Tielemans, their goal contributions have gone up. Kamara is the perfect player to just sit and get the ball, and all he does is, I think we said about it in the last podcast, gets the ball. Yes, he can spray a 30-40 yard pass, but all he needs to do is get the ball back, play a 10-15 yard pass into the Tielemans and Douglas Luiz when Douglas Luiz was there, and they can play them balls forward. That's what he's so good at, and that's what every team needs. Like you say, it's a small bucket of players, number sixes. So if we are to sell him at any point in the future, there's going to be a lot of money involved, and rightfully so.
Oh, massively so. Before we go any further, Villa fans, make sure to drop us a comment and let us know how you feel about the Boubacar Kamara new contract, and also make sure to drop us a firm subscribe and also follow to our TikTok. We are very close now to 200 subscribers, which will be the first goal. So yeah, if you can drop us subscribe, that'd be really appreciated. It helps the channel grow. So on that note, I think it's a very good point, as we've briefly touched on it there, is to talk about Oliver, George, Arthur, Watkins. We've talked many times on this podcast about Ollie Watkins and what our views on him, and I know me and you reiterate similar sort of views. We love Ollie Watkins. So the news was broken today by John Percy that Aston Villa basically do not wish to engage with any club and they do not want to sell Ollie Watkins. Sky Sports have put out this evening, I don't know if you've seen yet, Corey, that apparently Manchester United have held initial talks with Villa for Ollie Watkins. I'll just say at this point, I wouldn't take anything that Sky Sports say as gospel because they're not the most reliable. I personally would rather take journalists, especially off Twitter, as more of a reliable source than Sky Sports, because for me, Sky Sports just read and rehash stuff that they see online. That's my general opinion on it. So if someone like especially from the Telegraph, most of the journalists from the Telegraph are very, very good. So this one come from John Percy, who hasn't had, I would say, the most strong links to Aston Villa since the days of Christian Perslow. I felt like he used to have a little bit more of a stronger link to Villa then, but he has said it, and I just feel like with someone like him, he won't say it unless he's got a credible source. So, yeah. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with John Percy. Obviously, like you say, since the Perslow days, he's not had much of a say. But when he is saying stuff, it's normally bang on. I think, like you say, Sky Sports, they just need news. For me personally, we know that from what I'm reading through the John Percy article, from what he said is Man United held talks with Watkins and Villa. Villa straight away said no. So what you'll probably find there with Sky Sports is they've picked up on the talks bit, thought, we're having a slow day, let's get some news floating around. We'll chuck out the fact they've spoken, not the fact that he's not going anywhere. Right, so yeah, obviously you've hit the nail on the head when it comes to Ollie Watkins. I think similar to Kamara, he's one of those players we just can't afford to lose. There's not a lot of top-class strikers out there. There's one that's available right now, which we will get into a bit later, but he's never going to come to Villa. There's the Sescos of the world, who's unproven. There's Gyökeres, who's obviously on his way to Arsenal again, unproven in the Premier League. And I think we've got a striker who, for the last 3-4 seasons, has been one of, if not the best striker in the Premier League. There's an argument that you could say he's been the best in terms of just goal contributions as a whole with his assists as well. And obviously off the ball, how well he works and things like that. And he clearly loves the Villa, and that's something that you can see whenever he scores a goal, the way he celebrates. And listen, I'm just buzzed. It's been a very good day to be a Villa fan today with these sort of news coming through. And like you say, John Percy, he's a very reliable source. He never tweets anything unless he's 100% sure on it. So that's good news.
Well, you just look back to the goal that he scored when he broke the record. You could see in his face how much that actually meant to him. Like I say, around the Sky Sports links of Watkins and Manchester United, you hit the nail on the head when you spoke about Sky Sports potentially having a slow day. Effectively, Manchester United striker Ollie Watkins, 3 big things that are going to be clickbait for people to go on and read. Doesn't mean there's absolutely any credibility in what they're saying, so wouldn't even take any ounce of notice in any of that, in my opinion. So we'll move on from that one. I think, like I say, for me, it's an absolutely brilliant bit of news that Ollie Watkins is staying at Aston Villa Football Club. The next bit we want to talk about is the potential shift in formation for Aston Villa. So I'm going to pull up a photo here so we can have a look at it and talk about it as together. So this is the potential if Aston Villa are going to line up in a 3-4-2-1 formation. So as you can see there, Emi Martinez in goal, Ezri Konsa, Tyrone Mings, Pau Torres, Matty Cash, the midfield that we've just spoke about in Boubacar Kamara and Yuri Tillemans, Ian Matson at left wing back or left mid, whatever you want to call it, Daniel Marlon and Rodgers off of Ollie Watkins. And that, even that, is a very strong team to go into the season with. I'll be consistent. I still think Emi Martinez is not going to be at the club, whether that's come the start of the season or at the end of the window. I think that will materialise and he will go, in my opinion. But again, I could be completely wrong. And if he stays, I'm not going to complain about it. I'll always have a lot of time for Emi. Probably lose a little bit of respect for him if he was to go to Manchester United, which we've spoke about before. But do you know what? That formation change, I really like it because I don't particularly think in build-up it's going to affect us all that much. And then when we are, in a defensive, having to defend, we're having to sit in a bit deep, you are going to go back into a back five effectively. I like it. What do you think?
No, I like it. I think as well, like, as much as I know a lot of Villa fans, including yourself, aren't his biggest fan, it allows people like Matty Cash to do a job that we know Matty Cash is good at. Weirdly enough, over the last couple of seasons, I think some of his best games have been when he's played right wing for us. Obviously, previously at Forest, he used to be a right winger, and I think him being able to play almost as a right wing back will bring the best out of him. Obviously, we do notice that happened very much a lot last season where we saw the likes of Digne and Matson bombing forward and Cash sitting back a bit. I think obviously that will depend on who's playing. If Digne's playing left wing back, I think we'll see Matty Cash bomb forward a bit more and Konsa can shift out to right back. And then obviously if Matson's playing, we'll probably see Matson go forward a bit more and probably shove Mings out to left back, I'd imagine, rather than Pau Torres. Just for the pace side of things. But like you say, it's a very solid team. And I think you turn around, you look at the team and you say, the depth as well we've got. You've got your own Arnas who can play in there and replace Kamara and Tielemans. You've got Ramsey who could come in instead of Marlon or Rodgers. You've got all these sort of players, the young lads. Oshan, if he came in, he can play as a centre-back or left-back as well. So if we did shift into that back four, a lot of players, and it's a good formation.
There's one player that neither of us have mentioned, and he isn't in that team, and that is the skipper, Super John McGinn.
Yes, complete. But again, McGinn, he can play in any of those positions.
Yeah.
He could play left wing back if you wanted him to. He could play behind the striker. He can play in midfield. I think John McGinn himself knows that this season and the next few seasons he's probably not going to be playing as much as he wishes, but I think he'd be happy with that. He understands Aston Villa. He's been here for 7 years now. He's everything that is Aston Villa is him. Him and Tyrone Mings, they embody what Aston Villa is, and I think if he has to take a step back to help Villa progress, he'd do that, and I think that's just shows his character. But like I say, the squad depth is ridiculous as well.
I really do think this formation, what we're seeing, was potentially Emery's plan before Tyrone Mings got his injury.
Yes, definitely.
I really do, because if you remember rightly, during pre-season they did try with Pau Torres playing basically like a left back sort of role, and I think this has been on the cards for a while for Unai Emery. Like, listen, if we want to continue to progress as a football club and we want to be competitive in the Premier League, which is what obviously we want, you can't go into every season playing the exact same way, because that's how you get you get found out. Ability and having a world-class tactician in Unai Emery will only get you so far. You need to be adaptable. You need to change. You need to progress. And I think this is the way that Aston Villa move forward. And I really do hope that we do see a bit of a shift this season. We conceded far too many goals, and I think next season, and I get he's aging and he's not going to be around forever, but Tyrone Mings is absolutely imperative. He is. We are actually statistically a much better side when Tyrone Mings is in the side. Look, we didn't lose a game with Tyrone Mings when he started last season. I think he's actually a game when he played we didn't lose. So that's just a wild stat, isn't it? It really is a wild stat. But Pau Torres has his critics, and I personally have criticised Pau Torres at times last season. I think on the ball he's unarguably one of the best in the world at playing out from the back. His feet are a joke. So composed in possession. He can play the balls through the lines very, very well. Finds the forwards very, very well. But you just think when he comes up against someone like a Mateta or a Haaland, I don't know about you, mate. I get concerned. I really do.
So yeah, obviously the one thing, you mentioned Mateta and Haaland there. The perfect example is you look at Diego Carlos last season with the season before last, with the man of the match performances against Man City and Arsenal, against Havertz and Haaland. That's where Mings comes in. I think we knew that when Pau Torres and Carlos were playing together, it was that thing of, we don't want Pau Torres near those two players. We don't want them playing because of that, because of the fear of a Haaland bullying him like Mateta has done this season, just gone. Whereas when Mings comes on, it's a different story. Mings isn't going to be bullied. Mings will fight back, that sort of thing. I think as well, touching on the formation side of things, which you spoke on, there's the one thing I think Unai Emery's always been criticised for by other fans is not having a plan B. And I think sometimes we've seen that at Aston Villa. Listen, I love Unai Emery, so do you, so does every Villa fan, but we have to be critical at times, and there has been times when he's not had a plan B. And I think with this formation, if that's the formation we decide to start playing with, we can drop back into that 4-2-3-1 very comfortably. It's a simple change. You bring out a Pau Torres and put Bailey on, or whoever you want to play on as that forward player, and that's how simple it is to change. So having that three at the back to begin with, if we are struggling in games and need goals, the change can be so quick and easy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a good point to wrap up everything around B6, unless you've got anything else you want to go on and go off. I know we had that bid rejected for the centre-back. I couldn't tell you his name, to be honest. He's the young French lad, isn't it, from Toulouse. We won't really touch too much on him. We can maybe do a pod if we do sign him, but again, my knowledge is quite limited on the guy, so I'm not going to sit here and proclaim to be an absolute all-knowing everything, because I don't. I'm just another fan like everyone. So, should we move on to Beyond?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, so the main thing we want to speak about, and we've got planned, is, I don't really like to go over and over again talking about them, but Newcastle United, I think we have to talk about Newcastle, because what is going on in Newcastle right now must have their fans concerned. Obviously, the news has been broken today that Alexander Isak has requested to explore his options. I think that is the way they put it. So he wants to leave Newcastle United. I've gave my opinion on this, but just to go over it again, you can't blame him realistically. He wants to go and explore his options. He wants to further his career, and realistically, he probably wants to win things. I know he won the Carabao Cup, but what's the Carabao Cup really? I know we would like to win one, but that's neither here or there. Yeah. He wants to go and win the Champions League. He wants to go and win the Premier League, and realistically, he probably top 3 strikers in the world at the moment, potentially. Would that be fair to say? I rate him that highly. I think he's a phenomenal forward.
I think there's an argument for him being number 1. That's how good he is. I think, for me personally, there is 2 that are ahead of him, but I do think there is that argument to be had, and I think obviously it reiterates what I said in the last podcast, and I asked this question in the last podcast, and it wasn't me taking a swipe at Newcastle, because this is exactly what's happened, and I don't want to say I'm some sort of mystic meg or whatever, but the question I asked was, what is it about Newcastle United that players don't like? Why is it that they've been linked to all these players, they've gone in for all these players, and they've been rejected? The Ekitike deal, for example, there's Newcastle fans saying, oh, it was brilliant by us, it was getting the stuff off of Isak. I'll get onto Isak in a second, but all these players that have sort of rejected Newcastle, why? And then you look at Isak wanting to leave now, Anthony Gordon wanted to leave last season, but ended up sticking around in the end. It must be concerning for Newcastle. I think from a football fan's perspective, just from a neutral perspective, I said to you before the podcast, Ben, I think from a football fan's perspective, it's worrying how a team can get Champions League football, win the Carabao Cup, and their best player just wants to leave and go somewhere else. It's scary, and I think, touching on Isak, again, Newcastle fans, if this reaches you, and if you do see this, what are your thoughts? Are you annoyed at Isak? Are you annoyed at the club? Because obviously from the club side of things, you've had a terrible transfer window. You've got Anthony Isak. Don't get me wrong, we've not had a great window. We know that, we've discussed this already, but you've only bought in Anthony Isak, and now your best player's looking at leaving. It's what's gone wrong? What's the situation? Are you annoyed at Isak because he's waited until Ekitike and Victor Gyökeres have made moves, so now your only real option on the market is Benjamin Sesko, who is very young and very raw? He could come good if he came to the Premier League, but he could also be terrible. Johan Vissa's another option who, let's be honest, is nowhere near the levels of Alexander Isak and is a lot older. So that's the worrying part, and I think it's a weird situation at Newcastle, and it's not one that after the takeover I think we all thought they'd be in.
I think this window has been an absolute disaster at this point for them. If they do lose Alexander Isak, like Elanga's a decent signing, outright he's a decent signing. But if they lose Isak, especially after that Ekitike transfer didn't go through, it just looks so bad, doesn't it? Like the fact that they were being so firm on on Isak, and not signing Ekitike. And letting Ekitike go to Liverpool, if Liverpool go and take Isak as well, that is absolutely mental, isn't it? Liverpool, they're literally, I don't know what's going on with their finances this summer. I know Liverpool can spend; they're a monumental club. They're the biggest club in England, in my opinion. Close, they're between them and Man United. But the fact that Newcastle have only signed Elanga, potentially going to lose their best player. Flopped in every player that they've gone for. Delap, João Pedro. There is obviously more. That's just 2 off the top of my. James Trafford as well. Yeah, another one. There's obviously Mbeumo. Yeah, the list goes on, and just why can't they attract players? This window, literally, for me, instead of which should have been like a 10 out of 10 window and push Newcastle closer to competing for the Premier League. If anything, at this point, it's a -10 window, and they're looking like they're actually going to go into the season in a worse position. If they start the season with Johan Wissa up top and Isak's left the football club, I don't even know what to say about that.
I mean, I spoke about this as well. The thing is, and I don't want to compare Newcastle and Villa, that's not what I'm here to do, obviously. As much as like Ben, for example, likes to have a laugh and a joke with you Newcastle fans, the one thing we can all agree with is the idea of trying to take down this big 6 and jump in there. But the one thing, if I am to do a comparison, is you look at Villa. We've not had a great window, we've not signed anyone yet, but we're also in a position where, with the depth we've got, we can still challenge for Europe, the top sort of spots, because of the depth we've got, and we've done it for the last couple of seasons. I know some Villa fans might not agree with me, the likes of Leon Bailey, for example, who had a terrible season last season, but he's still capable of those seasons like he had before. You've got the depth now where we've got Onana, who's a £50 million player, just sitting on the bench. We've got McGinn, who we spoke about earlier. who potentially might not be playing. Jacob Ramsey, who's being linked with a move away, but still £50 million player, potentially sitting on the bench. Rodgers obviously isn't going to sit on the bench, but he could potentially miss a few games if anything. But we've got players to back that up. And you look at Newcastle and say exactly the same as when they got Champions League last time. They're 1 or 2 injuries away from just slipping again. They've got no depth. For me personally, I think selling Isak wouldn't be a bad thing, because the amount of money they could then use to rebuild would be brilliant. Losing Isak right now is a bad thing, because they've not got time to replace. And at the end of the day, if they get 130 million for him, they're going to have to pay 85 or 90, I think it was, for Sesko. So you've already wasted 2/3 of that on another striker, leaving you with 40 million to then try and sort the rest of your team with squad depth.
So I thought it was a good point to jump in there. So obviously, I was speaking to a Newcastle fan about this, because I've got quite a good contact with a Newcastle fan. So obviously, Newcastle signed Isak for around the 70 million mark, and he's been there for 3 seasons. So effectively, 60% of that transfer fee is already paid off of the 70 million. So let's just say around, I don't know, spitball a fee, 30 million. I'm not quite sure what the maths is. I'm not going to go into that detail. But if let's just say it's 20 million, 25 million left on the fee of the original fee. So take that off of the 150 million mark. Let's say they get that, which they might not. But you've still got then a massive chunk of money that you can go and invest in the playing squad. And I've said it again. I said it once. I'll say it again. I don't get the fear around selling and reinvesting in the squad, because that, like you've just said there, Newcastle's squad depth is so tight, isn't it?
You're spot on, Ben. I think the thing is as well, it's one thing that's been pointed out about Liverpool over the last few years is if Liverpool lose a player, it's a downward spiral, because they haven't got the squad depth. Now Liverpool have put themselves in a position where they've got the squad depth, and I think that's what Newcastle need to do, and that's where Villa, as much as we've not made flashy signings, like we've not gone out and bought an Alexander Isak, we've not gone and done that. We obviously, Moussa Diaby was a pretty big statement signing, but obviously we had to sell him in the end. But we've not done that, and we've invested well. So now we are in a position where, in these transfer windows where we maybe are a bit tight on the money we can spend, we don't have to. We've got a squad capable enough of competing for Europe again.
No, I agree with you. Is there any other bits that you want to go over, Corey? I was just checking our little plan, but I think we've pretty much covered everything at this point.
Yes, yeah, pretty much covered.
Yeah. So, well, on that point, I think it's a good opportunity to wrap it up. Villa fans, make sure to enter our competition for a free home shirt. So head over to our TikTok, have a look at the competition. So basically, if you have made it this far, make sure to hit that subscribe button. That is part of the competition. And we will be giving away a home shirt on August the 15th, just before the start of the new season. As always, guys, for all you Villa fans that listen to this, up the Villa.
Up the Villa.